All right, welcome everyone, all one of you. MG Rogue Tuesday night broadcast. Why? Because we can. And just doing this for the hell of it, really. I was going to do one last night, but nobody was around, and I didn't feel like talking to myself, so we're here now.
I say, isn't that what you got a cat for?
Yeah, he usually talks to me. I don't answer him back though. Fuck
Well,
him.
that's because he's just giving you crap. He's just bitching at you. Isn't that what he does?
Yeah,
Complain.
he meows and complains. Once I haven't fed him yet, so he may be over here bugging me later.
Okay.
I don't know how much I'll be talking to my dog.
You what?
I don't know how much I'm going to be talking to my dog, though.
He'll be talking to your dog. What's up, Blake? Chat. So, Robert, TJ, how are you both?
Bloody exhausted.
Yeah, you were saying you're like operating on about 6-7 hours sleep.
Yeah, I got about 4 hours Saturday night, and then I got 2 hours this morning. So that's been about it.
Jeez.
Which, for a middle-aged old man, the fact that I can go days without sleep and still get stuff done is, I think, fairly impressive. I know some 20-year-olds that can't pull that kind of crap off.
Yeah, it's a good testament to your stamina and strength.
Well, it's just one of those things. I was raised that you had to get stuff done, so you got stuff done. So it didn't matter that you were tired. It didn't matter that you hurt. You just did it. Whereas
Correct.
now, if you tell a kid that you need to put your cell phone away and you can't look at it while you're on the sales floor or, doing stuff in the lab or, whatever your job is, they're like, it's like you've taken heroin away from an addict. They just can't function. They don't know what to do or how to do it because they're just that constant, I don't know, dopamine hit or whatever from scrolling on Twitter or whatever it is that they're doing. It's just kind of funny and sad to watch.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I remember when I worked my jobs, we weren't allowed to have like those kind of retail jobs, grocery jobs. We either didn't have cell phones or we weren't allowed to have them. And it was this idea of one, it wasn't really that big of a deal. I mean, back and then you could go without having a cell phone. You could just call someone up on their landline.
Right.
Well, nobody really calls each other on their cell phones anyway. So it's just it's really a more technological advancement to Morse code and telegrams. Really, literally telegrams.
Yeah. Although I will say, at least some of the guys in our circle of friends and acquaintances will actually either call you. I mean, whether it's on the phone or it may be via technology. I mean,
yeah.
Not to tout anybody, but I know you and Rob both have talked about Rob calling you to talk about stuff.
Yeah, Rob. It's been
that.
A few months, but yeah, Rob and I talk on the phone. TJ and I talk on the phone. Aaron calls me a couple times a month.
Okay, but sending you dick pics, that I don't know if that really counts, Vince. But
no, those are blocked, and I send them on to Nick August.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure
he likes Clary's dick pics.
Yeah, probably because
I mean, it's difficult. To be honest, it's difficult to see. So
yeah,
you do need the special magnifying glasses. So thankfully, I don't have to deal with that too much.
I shouldn't give Cappy too much grief, if only because I've not spent nearly as much time with Cappy, and certainly have not met him in person like you guys have. So I don't feel that I've earned all that to give him too much grief. But
that's to your credit, and I mentioned this before. There's I see a lot of it online, especially with Aaron, and he's good natured about it, or he ignores it. Or just
or he amplifies it. I mean,
he amplifies it.
Yeah.
But if you haven't met any of us, and in this case Aaron, some of the shit that these guys say, like, just stop, stop.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say that one of the problems is this stuff's being done publicly, whereas in the past the inside joke stuff would be inside, literally, but it would be in a private setting. But because we're doing the stuff in public live streams or interactions or whatever, that's just it's an inevitable downside, an unfortunate one, but that's just how it's going to be because everybody wants to be participating. Everybody wants to feel involved.
Well, yeah, but even back in antiquity, when like Vince, Rollo, and I were younger, like say in high school or whatever, or even junior
You still
high,
didn't do that.
you know, you would be with your group of buddies, especially us doing the gaming thing. You know, there would be things that were inside jokes and things we could say to each other or about each other's family members or the things we would do with their sister or whatever.
That's right.
But if you weren't one of the guys that sat down at our gaming table or, you know, that grew up and went to the same grade school, junior high and high school with us or whatever, it's like, you know, who the F are you to, you know, you don't get to say that crap to us.
Yeah.
You know?
There's almost an immediate repulsion to dorks that did that. And I understand what TJ's saying. They want to fit in, but there's
they wouldn't even know it exists because how would they see it?
Well, you would see stuff in groups because obviously when you're hanging out with your friends in a crowded hallway at school or after school or whatever, there's always that person that's kind of around that maybe wants to hang out with you or knows one of the guys in the group or whatever. But you know, you don't get, you know, hey, my buddy so and so's throwing a party, you want to come with, and you go to the party. You don't act like, you know.
Yeah, you're not sitting there making fun of everybody you don't know, like
right.
Hail fellow well met to strangers.
Yeah, you got to kind of earn your way into the group. The fact that you knew someone in the group and you got an invite was, you know, your first step in the doorway. But that doesn't mean you get to, you know, talk the talk with them because you just haven't earned it yet. And it would be the same way joining a military group. You know, you transfer to a new base or transfer into a new unit, even for training. You know, you've got guys that have been at that tech school longer than you, even though you guys are all in the same barracks. They're, you know, anywhere from a month or two ahead of you in training or just a week ahead of you in training. And, you know, you got to kind of wait to earn your spot in the group before you start, you know, playing grab ass and talking shit with people because it's like, you know, hey noob, you just got here, you know, there's a
level of respect that
that hierarchy hasn't been
and that's something I've actually been thinking about is how the internet has removed these hierarchical structures and these kind of I don't want to say rituals, but I'm not saying like literal welcome to tribal council type rituals. I'm talking more of just where it's a ritual where a guy is finally accepted as part of the group. They don't say, you are now finally a part of the group. We are now a part of the tribe, like C-3PO. But where they just acknowledge, they like when the guys give you a nickname, like, you know, I'm trying to think of, there's like that one guy from the TV show Pacific where it was about those, the Marines in their Guadalcanal. And one of the guys,
from the Ambrose book.
Yeah, and the one of the guys is just puking because he ate peaches too fast. And so one of the other guys goes, all right, your nickname's Peaches now.
Yeah.
Like that's when you realize you're part of the group, is when you've been given a nickname. And so, but we don't have that stuff online. And so it allows people to have, I keep saying it, this false sense of like emotional intimacy.
A false sense of camaraderie, yeah. TJ, very quickly, Blake wants to know what the tobacco is. What's the cigar you're smoking?
I'm trying to find it.
And why aren't you smoking a pipe?
I could be smoking a pipe, but I had one of those days where I needed to smoke a cigar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like an Alec Bradley. Alec Bradley. It's one of the, and it is the lineage. So Alec Bradley. So the interesting thing about the Alec Bradleys is they come in a pouch that's a humidifier, or not a humidifier, humidor.
Right.
I have one, but I don't know if not the pouch, but I've got an actual box. I just don't know if it's working right now, but because this is a little dry, but it's still good.
Do you you've got your distilled water, right?
Distilled water be?
Well, you season the humidor with distilled water,
Mhm.
and
I
then
have not done that. No.
then the sponge that usually is on a Velcro, you can take it off like a little. Looks like a little cap. Like
I'm gonna have to
looks.
bring my. I'm gonna have to bring mine and have you look at it.
Yeah, and I'll send you a link of some uh, humidifying pouches you can buy that usually keeps the temperature within the range that's written on the outside of the pouch.
may have been-
I'll actually show it to you,
It may have been-
but I'll show you what to do.
Yeah. So,
But all right, cool.
anyways, I was just saying how hierarchies get circumvented on the internet because, and there's a combination of reasons. One is you have the same amount of access to a person, not in a literal physical sense, but everybody can respond to what they're saying
Mhm.
and seeing. And also you got the stuff that goes on online, and everybody can participate, as opposed to where if you have a a gentleman's club or a men's club or whatever it is, and you've got all that stuff going on behind the scenes, people really don't know about it because it's not public, and so they can't just barge in when you guys are hanging out. But if you're hanging out online in public, like we're doing right now, somebody could come in and comment on this stuff. So I'm just saying, like, I think that's just it's either something people have to accept, or they gotta, and I obviously Cappy has accepted it and embraces it and amplifies it. But if other guys don't like it, they gotta take all this stuff private.
Yeah.
Which I think is, yeah.
Well, I'm sure some of it's a generational thing too, because even in this new medium, I still operate by old standards, programming, however you want to look at it, and
Yeah.
and Vince certainly does as well to varying degrees. I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, Vince, but
No, you're spot on.
But that doesn't mean someone else your age, TJ, or even one of the younger guys in our circle of acquaintances online. Certainly the dynamic with like Alex and Governor Megatron and those guys is very different. That the vibe with them talking to them is very different than it is talking with us or talking with Rob or talking with Nick. It's just
I've definitely felt like the generational divide thing, where they have millennials and whatever it is, and I keep saying, guys, you got to stop wherever the age was where you were able to recall when you had no internet in your house. There was no internet, which I can, you guys all can. We know what it's like to have a house where there is no internet. There are people who are in their 20s who do not know, or people who are considered millennials who do not remember what life was like without the internet in any meaningful sense, for all intents and purposes, their entire lives. Now you got people who don't even know what life was like before social media and smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that that's all they know, but that's what they grew up on. Whereas everything that I grew up on was in real life. You interact with people in real life. The internet was just an auxiliary and an extension of that. And I think I've probably said this a million times before, but I don't think that they really fully understand what's been lost, and so they're not going to preserve it, and they probably don't see it as something that was worth preserving.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the older I get, it was funny. I was going back through some old journals I found from my college days, and I was very much even then opposed to like how what I saw was the centralizing of the internet, where we were becoming more and more dependent on the internet for stuff, and I'm at the point. I'm kind of at the point where I'm at a bit of an impasse where I rely on it for so much of what I do, but I also hate it because you can't. With the good comes the bad. With the sweet comes the sour. And so, yeah, it's nice being able to buy a house while I'm sitting in traffic on a state highway because I've got access to my email on my phone.
Yeah.
At the same time, I feel like I have to have my phone with me at all times because I have no idea who's going to reach out to me at that moment, who might have something important to tell me that I can respond to immediately. But
yeah, the ease at which you can communicate is definitely a benefit.
Whereas
That's
if
for
you,
sure.
back in the day, you had a landline, and if people couldn't get a hold of you, they just left a message, and you would get back to them in a timely manner. And the thing I've thought about going back to all that, not necessarily a landline, but just flip phone or something like that. But then I realized I want to go back to a time period that doesn't exist, and that device will not take me back to that time period.
Yeah.
And that's a problem with a lot of nostalgia. It's like, people get nostalgic when they see an Atari. They get nostalgic when they see a certain arcade game. But do they really want to play that game? Not really, because what they're really looking for is the social environment that game
That it
that they
fostered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I have my Nintendo 64 and I'll play a game occasionally, but like it's not the same when I was, in the 90s playing these games with a bunch of friends coming over with
Well,
pizza.
that's it. That's it. I mean, if we're, I don't know, it's a double-edged sword, but if we're fortunate or unfortunate enough to be laying in our deathbed, contemplating existentially what, our lives, we're not going to be really thinking about too many physical things, but those good, fun times
Yeah.
that we had with our friends and family and loved ones.
Yeah.
That's those are the movies you want to replay in your head. Those are the things you want to go back to, and those things are vehicles for that. So it's nice to nostalgia is nice. I mean, and looking back, and I'm a romantic at heart, and I like that kind of shit. Very
We all
sentimental.
are, at least
Exactly, we are
in this group.
Yeah. So I think it's important that we honor and remember that, and I think it speaks highly to our own character to have that aspect of ourselves that we. I hate to use the word nurture, but I guess we kind of do in a sense. So.
Oh my God, man! You will occasionally post a picture of you. You've got the fireplace going. You've got a book on your lap. You've got a drink at hand, maybe a cigar at hand, and you've got an album playing on vinyl, not a CD. But
Yeah.
you've thrown on an album.
Yeah.
And I can completely get and understand that. I mean, we are all of us. Certainly, Vince and I are of a generation that we can remember living in a house pre-cable TV. Where
we never had cable.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Growing up, I have cable.
Yeah, so I had friends that did. So if I was over at one of the two mics I hung out with, I could watch MTV there, or Showtime or HBO or something like that. But didn't have cable. When I spent time down in a small town on the outskirts of Indianapolis, outside the circle of 465, which is the major interstate that circles the city. My great grandmother, where she lived with her brother, my Uncle Bob, and my grandparents, who lived like 2 houses away, right next door to a store that had the post office built attached to it, that had all the mailboxes inside the post office for all the people in that community. They had no indoor bathrooms, so they had outhouses on the properties, in each of the properties. They did have running water to a sink, but not indoor bathrooms. And I spent most of my childhood down in that little rural farming community, and I loved it. There's a magic when I think of like summer nights down there, even though there weren't a lot of kids my age. So it's not like I hung out and ran with a bunch of kids. I spent a lot of time with much older people, and I spent a lot of time by myself. But fortunately, my temperament was such that for the most part, it didn't bother me, and I enjoyed the solitude and stuff. But still, there were moments where I would meet girls from down in that area who were either visiting relatives as well, or those who would move in and move out of the neighborhoods, the community. And those created some magical and interesting moments, including the first time I had a girl take her top off for me. That was
Boobies.
Yeah, back in the 70s. So we're talking a slender, just developing, long-haired, female who was a little bit older than I was. So, but I mean, yeah, so I mean, there's a certain magic there. But the thing is, I can turn the TV off at midnight, 1:00, just like the TV would sign off with before cable, when there were only 2 or 3 networks, maybe 4, if depending on how big of a city you lived in. But the magic of like radio, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get into broadcasting and did get into working in broadcasting and in radio, in that medium, that magic is gone, and that industry was basically kind of killed in a way, partially with some of the regulation and stuff in the 80s, and various huge corporations buying up stations, so everything sounds very derivative and stuff. But the days of getting attached to a DJ's voice in the small hours of the night or the morning, kind of talking to you and playing groovy songs on the FM radio back in the 70s and stuff, that I'm not going to get that. Fortunately, thanks to the technology, you can search some of that stuff out on YouTube and other places, and you can find old air checks from guys who worked at like WIBC or WNAP or WIFE, or any of the early FM stations when 93.1 was the buzzard and Q95 was kick-ass rock and roll, and 95.5 on the FM dial and stuff like that. So I mean, you can find that kind of stuff. You can find old broadcasts of like Wolfman Jack or old episodes of the Midnight Special, and I've got, between vinyl, digital, CD, all of Casey Kasem's American Top 40 shows, from this first show in the 70s, in 71, to his last shows in the mid to late 80s. So, I've got that stuff, and I can listen to that kind of stuff. But man, there's just such a temptation, especially as you get older, to drown in nostalgia. And as much as I love that time, and as much as I love those memories, you can't go back to it. And if you sit there just spending all your time wallowing in it, you kind of stop living in the moment and making any new memories. And there are countries I haven't been, and women in those countries with whom I've yet to fornicate. So I can't just stay at home. I gotta keep living life. And Vince is a good example of that. I mean, every time you get decent weather, are you not out on your motorcycle going somewhere?
Correct.
Either with someone, meeting someone, or taking someone with. I mean, you continue to write the adventures of your life, even if you might prefer things to be more like they were at a certain period of time in your life. Certainly knowing the stuff we know now about how women operate, at least have a better understanding of what our expectations should be, and that certain expectations are just unrealistic. So enjoy them for what they are, not for what they aren't.
Yeah. Scott Fitzgerald had a sentiment about that. He said something effective. It's as you get older and you go out into the world and then you return home, those places aren't the same. And it's not the places and things that have changed, it's you.
Yep.
So that's part of the problem.
In my case, it's kind of the opposite, where the area I live in has completely changed from what it used to be, and I haven't. And so that creates this whole weird sense of like not belonging where you're from. And so I don't know.
Well, that's because your homeland is conquered territory, TJ. Essentially,
I was having a conversation actually with Aaron, because I was asking him, and I'm not revealing any, like, I highly doubt I'm revealing any private details, but I asked, like, do you have any nostalgia for your hometown? And he said no. He had no nostalgia for. He did not have a positive view of his course the train comes by.
Right.
Of his, growing up in his hometown. Like, but for me, it was the opposite. I mean, we're going to pause 1 second. We'll get back to you after these important messages from Binford Tools. Okay, the train's gone by. I grew up in a very idyllic town in the sense that it's a very beautiful town. Its name in French is Beautiful View. It was very walkable. There were parks everywhere. You could walk for miles you didn't really have to drive a car. If you wanted to, you could walk. I walked to my job as a grocery clerk. And it went from being a middle-class town to the most expensive real estate in the entire nation as far as residential is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So Bellevue, Washington is now the house that I lived in was when I grew up in. It was bought in the mid-90s for $195,000. It is back before they hiked interest rates. Its value was $1.6 million. Like you can buy a house of that similar size and type in other parts of the country for the same similar price, but those areas are not Bellevue, Washington.
Right.
So I think that it's an interesting life experience for people to have grown up in hard times and things have gotten better for them, as opposed to people who grew up in, like, I grew up in an environment that now I had access to resources and to locations and to places. I mean, that you could never have today because it's just too expensive, like that area. And so it's true, like, you got to move on from that kind of stuff. But at the same time, once you've known, there's that saying, like, to have known and lost is better to have never known at all. Mm-hmm. I can say from personal experience, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't know what it's like to have never known some things regarding that kind of stuff. But
TJ, before I stepped away, you said something about you being a grocery clerk.
Yeah, I was a grocery clerk.
That's awesome. It's like very Norman Rockwell. Like,
yeah.
God, did you wear an apron?
Yes.
Gosh, ma'am, can I bag your groceries for you?
That was actually looking back, that was actually kind of a cool job. I worked mostly in the dairy department, but I mean, I worked around with people, where they were actually had social skills despite being, whatever they were from. And I even had to work on Thanksgiving. I had to work that day. I got paid, extra, but it was one of those things where it wasn't an intense environment where you had to perform and meet certain metrics. It was just, you were a grocery clerk, so it was kind of fun. And like, it was a low stress job. I wasn't expected to like sell something, and you kind of your expectation was to get certain things done by the end of the day. So, it was, I look back at a lot of these jobs I used to work, and maybe it's the lens, the filter of nostalgia, thinking about what what you had then, what you didn't have now. But a lot of that stuff, for the most part, was pre-smartphone, pre-social media.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one time there was a snowstorm when I was working this crappy job in downtown Bellevue, and I managed to trudge up this very, very long windy hill in a Toyota Camry and made it back to a neighbor's house because everybody else in my neighborhood had lost their power. Mm-hmm. So we were all just hanging out. We were all hanging out at their place and just, I don't know, just hanging out, like just chatting and maybe playing some board games or something like that. Like, we were just trying to get people. It seems really, I don't know what the rest of the country is like. I just know what's going on in my community. What I see is trying to get people together to do stuff is incredibly difficult. That's one of the things I'm nostalgic for from back in the day. Is it seemed like people, and I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's just who knows. Trying to get people to do stuff in a big group is almost now impossible. Mm-hmm. You just can't do it. I grew up in an environment, in a community where there were 7 families that met, that went to the same camping site not the same one, but like we would all converge at the same camping place, and we would do it the same time, the same week every year in the summer. And these were 7 families. Some of them had 7 kids. Like, this is a crusade of, like, socially it's a crusade compared to like what goes on now, right? You get 7 families to do anything now. It's like, how'd you pull it off? But it was just, yeah, we're just going to do this. Now it's everybody's got to have it their way. You know, it's like they're all got the Burger King mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's. You know, the nostalgia thing isn't so much the problem. It's that for me, it's the social environment doesn't exist anymore. Like you're not going to get eight friends to go play Age of Empires 2. You're just not going to do it. You're not going to get a handful of guys unless it's like a really special thing, but you're just not going to have that same spot. I was telling Vince this, the spontaneity is what's missing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm kind of a hell yes guy. So I got a phone call from a buddy of mine. He's got 4 daughters. They're all young. And he says, hey, you want to go hiking? He calls me up on like Thursday. You want to go hiking on Saturday? Yes. But we'll figure out the date and time, but like, let's just go hiking. Yes. The answer is yes. And so we went on a hike and he brought along one of his daughters. We had a good time, but like, that's kind of my mindset is it's pre-internet. It's let's go. Why not? I think that's the key thing. Why not? Why not go? Why not go hang out and do stuff?
No, that makes sense.
Exactly.
Hey, Doc. What's up, Nick? Faggot. I don't care about monetization because I don't monetize our site, so I can say words like that.
This. Monetize this.
Monetize these nuts.
Speaking of which, like one of the nostalgic things I had was where a whole bunch of us got together and played it. Not you guys, but when I was growing up, we played a card. It's a spaghetti western card game, and we played that for hours in this hotel, like ante room, whatever it was. It wasn't the lobby, but it was one of their side rooms, and we played it up well past midnight. And it was just these card games are so fun, and like the social dynamic of being around other people, all these things that you took for granted then. It was like that tweet that Instagram post. I can't remember what it was, but the guy says it's 1998. You have your Nintendo 64 and GoldenEye 64. Your friends are coming over with 4 controllers. They all have Rumble packs, and there's a cheese stuffed pepperoni pizza. You don't know it, but that's as good as life is going to get.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of almost want that to be on my tombstone.
Yeah, one of my older boys, the son number 3, he's in his early 20s now. But I can remember him in like junior high and high school asking me questions about my youth. And I guess the way I described growing up in like the 70s and 80s was it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And by that, what I meant was it was an absolutely glorious time to be alive, but that didn't mean that I didn't have things that sucked going on that prevented me from
life still was squeezing your nuts, but it just, it's a different, different time.
But I mean, in a graduating class of almost 1,000 people, so we had a 3-year high school. The freshmen all went to the junior highs at the time. So, but 3,000 people in my high school, and one of them was fat, maybe 2, like 1 male, 1 female, and that was it. The vast majority of the girls with whom I went to high school looked like all the pretty girls in those 80s movies. I mean, that was just the norm. And all of the girls, obviously, that I saw in the 70s that were even older than me, they all looked like the girls in those 70s drive-in classic kind of, Revenge of the Cheerleaders sort of movies. They were all very slender, long legs, long hair, perky breast, and it was just absolutely grand and glorious. But of course, when you're a kid and you don't have a car and you don't have total authority over what you do, when you do, how you do it, and with whom, you know, there are some rough patches there, but it was an absolutely great time to be alive. I would not want to go to high school with everybody's got their cell phone out just waiting for you to trip over your own feet so that they can post it on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. So, you know, hundreds of thousands of strangers can laugh at you at the worst moments in your lifetime. That kind of mean-spiritedness, narcissism, and hate. I'm glad I'm old enough, for the most part, I don't have to deal with it, and I can just kind of shut that stuff out. And worst case scenario, not that it would be pleasant if, you know, someone, like, I don't have any Jack Murphy moments, but, you know, something like that to publicly humiliate you, I at least have enough understanding of myself and who I am that while it would not be pleasant, it wouldn't be like, oh my God, this is literally the end of the world and I only have one option to get out of this, you know, which is an ultimate ending kind of a thing, which obviously when you're a kid, you don't have that kind of long range thinking because everything is immediate and now, and you know, there is no tomorrow. It's all right in that moment. And so yeah, I'm very glad I don't have to deal with that kind of stuff, and I'm very glad that because I'm at least aware that that's kind of how it is, and also what kind of festering dung heaps most public schools are, I'm at least able to do what I can to keep my youngest son out of that kind of a situation and experience, and you know, try to give him kind of a well-balanced, wholesome life where he's not spending all of his time on the internet and stuff like that. I mean, I know people that have their 6, 7, 8-year-old kids who have their own cell phones. That's not the case for my youngest son. He does not have a cell phone because he does not need a cell phone. If he wants to talk to his grandmother, then he can ask permission and, you know, he can use my phone or his mother's phone or whatever. And it's just, you know, so he doesn't need to be online 24/7, and he doesn't need to experience that kind of stuff. But man, there's just scary crap when you watch some of those videos.
Doc, yeah, it's I know the recommission.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about Battleship New Jersey, and that's docked over here in Camden, New Jersey. In fact, you can tour it, and they have other live events on the deck, which is kind of cool. So if you ever come out to New Jersey, and when TJ comes out again, we'll go visit the battleship. It's about half hour from here.
Yeah, I need to get down to the Carolinas and visit the Yorktown, because that's the ship my biological father served on in the 1960s.
I'll definitely do that.
Yeah. I agree with Mike. I'm probably one of the last generation of guys that had a place to cruise like that, which is what you did back in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Oh, you still did that in the 80s. I used to do that all the time.
Yeah,
my first vehicle. So much fun.
Oh, it was an absolute blast. But I mean, the main drag for cruising was still around and still in use. And the nice thing about it was it wasn't too far away from like a dollar theater. So I would hit that with an older buddy of mine, and we would get some malt duck and cruise the strip for a while, and then head to the Dollar Theater and see Iron Eagle for the 10th time, or The Last Dragon, or Weird Science. I remember seeing Weird Science at least a half a dozen times at the Dollar Theater.
Great song too. Now I used to play CB tag because I installed a CB radio in my car. We used to do that shit, and I also there's an auxiliary jack for an external speaker.
Oh, cool!
I used to put a speaker and wedge it in the window and mock people as we rode by, as we would ride by, hit them with insults and whatnot.
That does not surprise me. I knew a couple of guys that had that kind of a setup because, they'd use it to call girls, in another car that were cruising by to get their attention and stuff like that. So
I remember we were in Main Street, light turns green, we make a left, and I sped up, and on the corner there was about 7 or 8 girls hanging out, and just like without missing a beat, because my buddy was doing this weird weird rant about something, and as we were turning, he kind of looks over, he's like, "Oh, look, a whore convention," and then we keep driving, they're all screaming and yelling at us and throwing shit. But the timing of it was perfect. It was fucking fantastic. It's like stuff like that I remember.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, after doing that, you guys could have probably cruised back by there and at least nailed a couple of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Even after insulting them like that.
Mm-hmm. They weren't there when we drove back, but yeah, it would have been cool to pull up. I was like 17, 18.
Yeah.
Those were fun times. It was 1987.
Well, the other great thing about it, especially growing up in the 70s into the early 80s, you could work as a kid. I mean,
14.
Yeah, and the thing is, even not through the official channels, I mean, if you wanted a job, there was something you could do.
Yeah.
Whether paper
I was cutting lawns,
shoveling snow, mowing grass, whatever. I mean, I ended up, I worked in restaurants washing dishes way before I was old enough to, get a work permit and do that, and got paid cash under the table and got a free meal out of it as well. And, that was another thing my son had asked me about, because he asked me about some of my jobs I had as a kid, and I was telling him about washing dishes. And I think I've told you this story before, Vince, but my dad worked as a bread man, and so he and my mom, there were like 8 of us kids, and obviously the other 7 belonged to him and my mom, and I was the only one that actually just belonged to my mom. But anyway, my dad was a super nice guy, very in the red pill kind of lens thing, very beta insofar as he was utterly devoted to my mother and never should have been. It was the worst thing he ever did for himself, but that's a whole other set of stories. But anyway, so the restaurants and stores where he would deliver bread, people really liked him because he was just a decent guy and a very hardworking guy. And so back then there were all kinds of family restaurants and stuff, and people would tell my dad, it's like, hey, you got a lot of kids, it's hard to feed all of them. You bring them here and we'll give you a discount. And they would give him employee discounts or half off, or I don't know all of the different deals, but it was enough that he could afford to take 8 kids and my mom to a diner and eat. And one of the places we went on a Friday night, and they were kind of busy, and I guess their dishwasher didn't show up. So the owner came out and asked my dad, since he had all those kids, if there was any one of them that could maybe stay and do dishes for him. And obviously, as the oldest, that was kind of my responsibility to step up and say, yeah, I'll do it. And I did, just instinctively. And anyway, I stayed there and I washed dishes all night long till like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I did such a good job that they asked me if I wanted to do it, Friday, Saturday nights. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So, I ended up with a job. And like I said, I got paid cash at the end of the evening. I got, a stromboli or a small pizza, or I made myself a burger and fries, whatever. And I was in the back washing dishes, no one watching over my shoulders. And I had the radio on playing, hard rock and heavy metal, all the Dr. Pepper I could drink in a night, which, as a teenage boy, a teenage boy can drink like, 2,000 ounces of Dr. Pepper and shrug it off as if it was nothing.
Yeah. And that shit.
But there was just a certain zen I told him that I developed in doing the dishes, and just kind of being focused in on the moment and just kind of enjoying it. And, the fact that you were on your feet for hours and bent over a hot sink with your hands literally in scalding water and bleach water and all the different things you have to do, and, for sanitation and sterilization. But, I'm like, Yeah, it was great, but there's no way in hell you could do that kind of thing now. I mean, there's just it can't happen. The state is too involved in all that, and by the state being involved in that, there's a whole generation of kids that are denied opportunities to learn and experiences, and that just seems a shame to me.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think that that's part of the problem is, and this is where, with the younger people, I'm somewhat, they just never, what's interesting is they never describe it this way, but I would say they are just so restricted in what they can do. I mean, compare like growing up. I mean, there was American Graffiti, which is about, George Lucas's days as a high school student. And they're running around with these classic cars that are worth a fortune now, but back then they were just beat up cars that they went and, with minimal amount of money, we were able to get running again, and we're just drag racing and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's no way. This is why they don't have a problem. This is why they have no problem with young people having unlimited access to the internet, because there's no freedom. It's not really freedom.
No, it's a, for some, a gilded cage, but it's a cage nonetheless. Yeah. But yes, I mean, with that car culture, some of those old hot rods in that community, were cars that were built in like the 40s and early 50s that these guys in the 60s, chopped up, modified, dropped beefier engines in, and did all this kind of stuff to, and we're super passionate about it. I mean, hell, George Lucas was damn near killed in a car accident. I can't remember if he was drag racing at the time or just in his hot rod going a little too fast. But I mean, yeah, he damn near killed himself. And but yeah, that was his nostalgic look back at his lost youth, which was which was still kind of around. I mean, Vince and I got to experience it at the end. It was on life support, but we at least got to be there when it was drawing its last breath. And I'm absolutely glad that I would not wanted to have been born any later than I was, because I literally got to see the last century. And by hanging out with people that were born in 1900 and stuff, I got a glimpse of a world which, was almost 100 years gone by the time I came around, but I at least got to get a glimpse of it. And then, that changing into this new century, and whatever you want to call this weird dystopian future we're living in, which is not nearly as enjoyable as some of the books I read about dystopian futures in my youth.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, it's, I don't always look back on it with rose-colored glasses, but there is something that's lost, and I was fortunately aware enough that as my great uncle and grandparents and that kind of stuff, as they died off, I was aware that for all the stories I got out of them, there were still stories I didn't know. So there were stories that died with them and experiences that died with them that,
Yeah, I talked to a lot of World War II guys, and the stuff they told me about what it was like being in your late teens, early 20s, and the 40s, it was pretty crazy. It was a completely different world in terms of just the dynamics, like social dynamics, cultural dynamics, but also how. I mean, I was showing Vince this clip from one of Cappy's podcasts where these people will be dating online, but they will not interact in high school, right? The actual high school. Whereas these guys would talk about how they'd go on dates with all these different girls and it would be perfectly normal. And then you'd go steady with one of them, right? The whole concept of going steady. Whereas you do that now and it's like, as a teenager, it's like, they're like thinking, are you guys getting married? I don't know. There's this weird sense of like, I don't know. I think you guys probably know. It's a buffer. The internet is a buffer. Smartphones are a buffer.
They can be, yeah.
We talk about buffers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, because the moment you don't want to have to deal with them, you just don't look at your phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm reading a book right now by a World War II guy, and he's talking about this one gal where she has a guy she's going steady with, and yet she's hanging out with him and doing all sorts of stuff that in today's world, it's like getting married, you know? So.
Indeed. Oh, fuck. All right, we're all tired, so we're going to wrap up in about 7 minutes. We'll give the chat, if they have any questions for us or any comments to make, do so now. Get them in now. What's that?
Oh, Mike Steele's comment. I did that a couple. I snuck over the fence. We went over the fence a few times in my high school.
There you go. Go pool hopping. That was always fun.
We did that for drive-ins. A buddy of mine lived next door basically to a drive-in, and we'd sometimes sneak the fence just to hang out. And
I used to do that at a racetrack, the Garden State racetrack. Go watch the horses play and run and race. Yep.
I still absolutely love drive-ins. I'll go there to see a movie before I'll go to a megaplex, even the ones with the heated recliners and
absolutely stuff. We have one here in it's about an hour and 10 minutes or so from me in Vineland. There's one active one. I think the very first one in the nation was here in Camden.
I believe so. I'm pretty sure it was in Jersey.
Yeah, on the old airport circle. And Camden, Pennsauken area used to have an international airport, and that was one of the East Coast hubs before the Philadelphia airport was built. So that's where you landed. Both, I think some military planes would land there occasionally as well. But yeah, that was cool. It's good. It's fun to see aerial photographs. I wasn't sort of dated a chick for a while. Her father was a well-known aerial photographer for the area. Sent me all these photos. I'm like, wow, this is badass. So I stayed with her longer than I should have, just so I can get more aerial photographs. So it was it's kind of cool. That was a long time ago, though. Yeah. Take it easy, Joe. I think I've seen you in our chats before. Good to see you again. Hey, Danny Arnold. I know that name, Danny Arnold. You're coming in at the end, you lazy, slacking son of a bitch. Anyway, better late than never, I suppose. This wasn't really planned. Rogue broadcasts usually are not. If they are, it's usually a day in advance. So I don't do any marketing for it. Not that I do much marketing for any of our stuff anyway. But
no, you got to be kind of lucky to find us. I mean, that's kind of how it was for me. I think it was a fluke that I came across you guys playing D&D one night back before I
right.
Yeah,
back in the early Drew and Rollo days.
Yeah, and I think Rob was even still in the game at the time, because I remember commenting on it. It's like, oh, Rollo was describing a monster, an insectoid monster, and it's like, oh, I know what module you guys are playing. And it was the first part of the Slave Lords, if I remember right.
We've been on that for over a year now. It's been fun. It's been fun. I if I could schedule D&D games every Wednesday night, I would. With the occasional guest here and there on a random Saturday or during the week. But I know everyone's schedules. That's very difficult. So I figured, you know what? Twice a month is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of our guests have been really cool. Having Frank Fazzetta's grandson on the show a couple of weeks ago was absolutely awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, meeting him in person, having him give my girl and I the tour of the museum was quite fun, and actually being out there. I told him, I was like, look, if you and your family don't mind, one of the days you're Not to have too many people in the parking lot. I'm just gonna drive up, park my car, and set up my mobile picnic table and write one of my novels on your fucking lawn. It's a great inspiration. So,
well, it looked beautiful. I mean, from some of the shots you've shared, and then of course from some of the stuff you can see on their website. I can absolutely understand why Frank just didn't want to leave there, because there's no reason for him to.
70 acres of amazingness.
Yeah.
That the little lake, that large pond is all man-made. It was all because that was all. There's still, when I went around towards the back of the museum, the marsh came up almost to the back of the museum, the back wall, and some of that's still there. And he said that actually covered the rest of that pond area, and they dredged that out. So,
yeah. So I do not blame him a bit.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I could see even TJ being comfortable out there and just not wanting to go anywhere.
Yeah, it's a good area. It's East Stroudsburg, technically the Pocono area. It's about a 2.5 hour ride. Completely doable in a day. So that was fun. So yeah, next time TJ's out here, we'll head up there.
Yeah, that might be kind of a cool place to do a remote special show or something.
Well, I was thinking
you tape it to play later on a regular Wednesday night, but actually record something while you're out there.
I was thinking of doing like a live stream tour of the grounds, and then do like another small interview in the museum itself with a camera and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the good idea. I think it'd be really cool.
Likewise. Yeah, there's some stuff like that in the works. But as I was saying, I could be completely fine with D&D games every Wednesday.
Yeah.
No problem with that. But you're right. We have had some cool guests. I was thinking about Kamran Pasha the other day. I'm wondering what happened to him, because his Twitter got nuked. Like not long after we had him on the show. Right. But he was a really good high energy guest. That former Hollywood actor dude. I wrote that one book, which is still on my to read list.
You might reach out, see how he's doing, and see if he'd want to come back and talk about what all's been going on since then or something. I mean,
I was thinking that I have to see what other social media he has. I'm sure he's got Facebook, which I don't do. He might have Instagram, which I could DM him through that. I don't think he has a formal website, but I could look around. But
yeah, there are a few people I wouldn't mind having come on and hanging out with us sometime, but I'd want to make it something that it would be, obviously worth their time just to hang out with us. I mean, as far as them understanding, hey, we're not going to sell 2,000 copies of your book by being on our show or something like that, or whatever their show is or whatever they're selling. But, if they'd still like to come on and talk, guys like Blaine Pardo, who used to work for Catalyst doing BattleTech novels and stuff, and who got canned from there because of a very bad actor in the alphabet community who allegedly committed criminal acts, but despite that, Catalyst still sided with them over him. But I mean, he's written other books outside of that. But I mean, he's obviously worked in the game geek realm, and so I mean, he would be a good fit as far as the kind of stuff we're into is the kind of stuff he works on. So
all right, I'll do some research on him then.
Yeah, so I mean that's someone, and obviously there are other people as well. So, but yeah, you've gotten some really interesting guests lined up, and that have been on the show even well before I got mixed up with you guys.
Right.
Which I'm very glad that I did. I've had a blast being here, so thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a pleasure and an honor. Yeah, I figured it's like if I want someone on the show, I'll do my best to reach out to them. But I do have a rule. I don't beg.
No.
I will drop one email and one social media DM. And that's it. I I understand people have commitments and got shit going on, but there's no reason not to respond to that.
Yeah.
So,
speaking of responses, even though we're going to be wrapping up here, have you heard anything back from John Norman lately, or anything with him as far as how he's doing? Or
nope. Like I said, I may make an exception, not in a begging format, but say, hey, sent you an email a while back, just following up one more time. Present this offer, even if he wants to do it via an email interview, or he wants to do it recorded. So if we need to cut anything or trim something or remove it, obviously, we can do so. I have no problem with that.
I mean, you have at least talked to him or had a response back at some time ago, right? Yeah. So,
so he could be in the hospital for all I know. I have no idea.
Right, because it's not like he's a young man by any means.
No, he's in his late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, but I would love to talk to him just because.
Absolutely.
Because of his insights as an academic, every bit as much as the world of fiction and body of fiction that he's.
He's a Princeton alumnus, and he was a Princeton teacher for a while.
Yeah.
Out here in Jersey, he lives in Long Island.
Yeah.
I have his address, I think.
Yeah. But I just it would be nice to hear from him, because I don't know. God, when was the last time anyone would have talked to him? Like an interview in Playboy, like 20 years ago or something like that. I mean,
there was an interview in a sci-fi mag. In fact, I posted some of it on Instagram a while ago. Science log or something log or star log or star log. I think it's star log. Yeah, that was an interview done in the late 70s, early 80s. I think. So that's the most recent one that I'm aware of.
Yeah. So it'd just be nice to hear from him and hear some of his thoughts and insights before it's gone and lost,
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement. We're of the same mind of that. So I'll probably, well, not probably, I will reach out to him one more time later this month or in May. I also have Henry Cavill's agent's number and email.
Oh, okay.
So it's a long shot. I know, like, he's not gonna cut. I don't fucking care. I'm gonna try.
Well, hell, he could do the paint show.
Well, honestly, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look, I mean, I know if like, look, if you got time, you want to come hang out with some fellow nerds and fellow painters.
Yeah,
just shoot the shit, talk some normal stuff.
Yeah, because he's in the UK. I mean, we could do an afternoon broadcast to do it, with early evening for him in the UK and in our afternoon, and we'll just do a special afternoon painting show. I mean, he and Rollo can paint Warhammer minis while you and I are painting D&D minis or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
That'd be a blast.
No, it would be fun. So I'm trying to figure out how to word that email, because I have the email address. There's actually two addresses that I have. His UK management and his US management. So
that'd be fun. Well, we'll have to do some strategizing off air sometime for some things we would like to do in the future above and beyond.
Absolutely. And there's another masculine geek, Village by the Sea. Being planned.
I saw that.
Yeah. We're not telling anyone when it is. You'll know when it happens. We'll roll with those. We're not doing a meetup because there's too many spurgs out there. Unless we know you. We've met you before or interacted with you.
Are we going to have to head out to Utah and grab Rob and then head up to the Pacific Northwest where someone lives in the Pacific Northwest and like have a rescue mission to get him out of there?
An intervention.
Liberate
We'll
him
have to
from
do an
occupied
intervention
territory.
one of these months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get TG out of the occupied territories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, we're all fucking tired. We're old. I have another glass of wine. I think I want to finish. And then tomorrow is Drew's campaign. So tune in for that. Same time, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we'll have a new player. Who in the Pacific? Come on. You're being
Really?
facetious. You're being facetious. I know you are.
Where do you live again, TJ?
I live in Cappy's basement.
We knew it. We knew it.
Where you have to put the lotion on the skin or else you get the hose again?
Well, I got to generate the GDP.
Oh, okay.
Well, enough said. We don't want to know anymore.
No, you know exactly what I mean.
I know what you're saying. I'm fucking with you. Anyway, all right. So if there's no more questions, we're going to sign off because we're all tired and old. And I live in the Seattle. Oh, you live in the Seattle area. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Actually,
Yeah, our condolences.
I
heard it was beautiful once.
Well, I'm sure the countryside and mountainous area still is, but
the natural geography is beautiful.
Natural geography is, most likely very beautiful. And I've seen photos. I myself have not been out that far, but I've seen photos. But your urban areas are a complete shithole.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry. Get the fuck out of there, brother.
Yeah.
God damn.
But thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. Mike
Yeah.
and Danny and Joe and Doc and everybody else.
Yeah, we had a decent following, decent chat. Doc dropped in. I haven't seen Doc in a while.
No.
So, all right, I'm gonna get some music queued up to take us out. But in the meantime, go ahead, TJ.
All right, guys, you know the drill. Keep the fires burning, keep the wine flowing, keep the lead shooting down range. Don't take any wooden nickels. Don't drink all the rum, and tune in to tomorrow's broadcast.
There we go, where we play our live stream AD&D game with Drew Bay as Dungeon Master. Until then.